One of Russia's biggest advantages in the Ukraine war is its ability to consistently strike the Ukrainian rear with missiles and drones launched from the occupied territories. That advantage isn't gone, but thanks to the US, Ukraine is on the verge of reaching parity. A new US weapon is about to change the Ukraine war and turn the Russian rear into a kill zone like no other, and Russia is powerless to stop what's coming. On February 2nd, the War Zone, or TWZ, announced that the latest stage in the development of a vital new weapon has been completed. The Rusty Dagger has taken flight. Not only that, but it's completed a testing phase that brings this cost-effective cruise missile one step closer to arriving in Ukraine. According to TWZ, the US Air Force has released new details of a live-fire test of the new missile, which is one of a pair of extended-range attack munitions, or ERAMs, that are being developed as part of a program that will see thousands of these missiles arrive in Ukraine. We'll come back to that point in just a few moments. First, the Air Force test has been a resounding success. However, there is some confusion over when it actually took place. The US Air Force itself announced on January 30th that a successful live-fire test had taken place on the Eglin Test and Training Range on January 21st, 2025, which it says is less than 16 months since the awarding of the initial contract for the development of the missile. TWZ reports the same date, but Defense Express suggests that this live-fire date may be a typo. The real date, it claims, likely later, with the outlet offering the following explanation. The fact is that the development of the new cruise missiles under the ERAM program for Ukraine did not begin in 2023. The request for proposals, preceding competitor selection, and contract signing started on January 31st, 2024, followed by the October order, which explains the 16-month timeline. Which of the two dates is correct is important. If the date provided by the US Air Force is correct, and it's yet to be changed at the time of the creating of this video, then the Rusty Dagger may be very close to heading to Ukraine. A live-fire test conducted over a year ago means that whatever tweaks that needed to happen to the Rusty Dagger have either already been completed or are well underway. But if Defense Express is right about the typo, Ukraine may have to wait a little longer, assuming the test hasn't revealed that the Rusty Dagger is ready to go. Date confusion aside, there is a simple headline: the Rusty Dagger has been tested successfully. Brigadier General Robert Lyons III, who is America's portfolio acquisition executive for weapons, was quick to laud the successful test. Moving from a contract to a live-fire demonstration in under 2 years proves we can deliver lethal, cost-effective capability at the speed of relevance, he said, adding, "This is how we rebuild our military, by empowering our teams and industry partners to cut through bureaucracy and deliver the tools our warfighters need to prevail." The Rusty Dagger has enjoyed a rapid development cycle, regardless of which of the dates mentioned earlier is correct. And though the US Air Force doesn't mention the cruise missile by name in its press release, TWZ and Defense Express both state that photos of the test that have been released to the public clearly show that this is a weapon that has been tested. Those photos show the Rusty Dagger bearing down vertically on a stationary target, as well as its live warhead detonating. Right now, it isn't clear which aerial platform was used to launch the missile. However, if these ERAMs are heading to Ukraine, that likely means that F-16s were either involved in the test or will be compatible with the Rusty Dagger when it's ready to be unleashed. We've mentioned the ERAM program a few times already. As we said earlier in the video, the Rusty Dagger missile is part of the ERAM program that will see thousands of cruise missiles arrive in Ukraine courtesy of the United States. Janes reported on the ERAM deal back in September, noting that it had been signed on August 28th and will result in the US delivering 3,350 of what it calls embedded GPS inertial navigation system modules to Ukraine. Defense Express adds that this program is intended to deliver low-cost missiles to Ukraine. The 3,350 ERAMs that will arrive in the country have cost just $825 million and have been funded by Ukraine's European partners. That works out to about $246,000 per missile, which opens up the prospect of Ukraine buying even more for itself in the future. Think of Ukraine as the combat testing zone. The Rusty Dagger has passed its initial tests with flying colors. If Ukraine later proves that the missile can be used to cause serious damage to Russian targets, it will want to buy more. Ukraine will also have proven that the missile is viable in a combat zone, thus increasing demand and ensuring that the Rusty Dagger's manufacturer, Zone 5 Technologies, is inundated with enough orders to ensure that plenty more are made. These are all future concerns, but as you'll discover in a few moments, what we know so far about the Rusty Dagger suggests that this will be a missile that every Western nation wants. Before we get to that, the Rusty Dagger isn't the only missile being developed under the ERAM project. As United 24 Media noted in its February 3rd report on the successful test of the missile, a company called Co-Aspire is developing a cruise missile that follows a similar concept. though it's unclear if that missile has undergone any live-fire tests. Co-Aspire says that its missile, which it calls the Rapidly Adaptable Affordable Cruise Missile or RASM, has successfully completed long-range flights, as highlighted in a video posted to the company's YouTube channel. But beyond that, we haven't seen much more of the RASM. For now, Ukraine won't care about that. The live-fire testing of the Rusty Dagger means at least one ERAM has reached a significant milestone. And that means that the Rusty Dagger has taken a huge step closer to becoming part of a growing arsenal of weapons that Ukraine can use to strike the Russian rear. Among those weapons is the Ruta Block 2, which is a cruise missile developed by a company called Destinus. According to United 24 media, this cruise missile is an evolution of the previous Ruta missile, which was first deployed by the Ukrainian Defense Forces in December 2024. Details on the use of that missile, as well as when Ukraine can expect the Ruta Block 2, are limited. But the key takeaway here is that Ukraine is filling a cruise missile capability gap with weapons like this, and as you'll soon learn, filling that gap is paramount for Ukraine. Returning to the Rusty Dagger, what we know about this missile so far suggests that it will be a huge asset for Ukraine. According to Defense Express, the missile is believed to be highly accurate and capable of carrying a warhead weighing about 227 kilograms, or around 500 pounds. In terms of impact, that makes it roughly equivalent to many of the guided bombs that Russia has been unleashing on Ukraine's cities for the last few years. Beyond that 500-pound warhead, the Rusty Dagger is believed to be capable of traveling up to 400 kilometers or around 248 miles, which means its range is a little higher than the ATACMS missiles that Ukraine has received from the US, which it's also used to strike targets in the Russian rear. Rusty Dagger can allegedly also reach a top speed of Mach 0.6 and is accurate to within 10 meters, or around 32 feet of its target. TWZ adds a little more, noting that the missile carries a blast or fragmentation warhead, and that it's believed to have at least some degree of penetrating ability, which potentially makes it a good choice for tackling hardened targets. There is also a video published in June 2025 that shows what the Rusty Dagger looks like in flight. This video was shot before the live-fire testing, assuming the US Air Force's date is accurate, but it gives us some useful insights into the new missile. Chief among them is that Zone 5 Technologies has built the Rusty Dagger to enable multiple launch options, and that the missile's engine starts without any sort of pyrotechnics, which will presumably reduce its heat signature during its initial phase, making it more difficult to counter. The missile also navigates autonomously and is capable of hugging the terrain while using it in navigation. Again, this is ideal from the standpoint of countering Russia's air defenses, as the lower a missile flies, the less chance those air defenses have of spotting it in time to fire upon it. Incidentally, the RASM that Co-Aspire is developing appears to have similar specifications. It's a 3D printed missile that is about the same physical size as a GBU-38 or Mark 82 bomb, each of which weighs 500 pounds. The RASM can also be integrated into any aircraft capable of carrying the GBU-38, suggesting that it's been designed with compatibility with Ukraine's Soviet-era airframes in mind. What we have here is the results of the ERAM program in action. That program, especially the Rusty Dagger, is going to mean huge things for Ukraine. It alone will change everything. And by the way, if this is the kind of insight you crave, make sure that you're subscribed to the Military Show. We break it down like this every week in our videos. Now, earlier in the video, we touched on how the Rusty Dagger, along with other cruise missiles set to arrive in Ukraine, is going to have a major impact on Ukraine's combat capabilities. What this amounts to is Ukraine gaining the ability to hit Russian targets that are currently beyond the reach of most of the weapons that it has in its arsenal. TWZ reports that even Western-supplied precision-guided bombs aren't capable of striking as deep as the Rusty Dagger, yet the new American cruise missile can strike a target with about the same sort of force that those glide bombs can bring to the table. It would be inaccurate to say that Ukraine has no options for striking the Russian rear, particularly in the occupied regions of Ukraine. Plenty of Ukraine's long-range drones are more than capable of doing the job from a range perspective, though Ukraine will want to preserve as many of those drones as possible for strikes on Russian territory. Ukraine has also been developing middle strike drones, which, as the name implies, can strike the middle ground that FPV drones can't reach, and long-range drones are too valuable to use against. The Stepovy Vita is a good example. United 24 media reported on this drone's unveiling in February, noting that it has a 70-kilometer or 43.4-mile range, and that it can carry a 5-kilogram or 11-pound warhead. A useful weapon, sure. However, those specifications reveal why Ukraine needs cruise missiles like the Rusty Dagger. The American ERAM can travel over 4 times the distance and can strike with 100 times the firepower of the Stepovy Vita, which inevitably makes it the better choice for many of the targets that Ukraine will want to take out. Those targets are numerous. As TWZ notes, the Rusty Dagger's combination of range and power makes it a good choice for destroying Russian logistics hubs, air defenses, and command and control facilities. If rumors about this missile having penetrative capabilities are true, the Rusty Dagger will also be ideal for attacking airfields. Russia probably won't be able to stop it from bursting through hangars where airframes are stored. If Ukraine is allowed to use the missile inside Russia itself, it could also do a great job of limiting Russia's military-industrial capacity via devastating strikes on oil refineries and production facilities that Ukraine's long-range drones may not be capable of delivering. However, the word "allowed" may clue you in on a potential problem. Whether Ukraine will be allowed to use the Rusty Dagger in Russia itself is very much up for debate. Earlier, we mentioned that the new cruise missile can travel further than the ATACMS missiles that the US has provided to Ukraine. Those missiles were at the center of controversy in 2025 when the Wall Street Journal revealed that the Pentagon had been quietly blocking Ukraine's use of them against any targets that were not in Ukraine itself for much of the year. In August, the journal reported that the US had created a new permission system at some point during the late spring that had given the US the power to veto ATACMS use. Two unnamed officials told the outlet that they knew of at least one occasion where Ukraine sought to attack a target in Russia using ATACMS, only to have that request rejected by this new review mechanism. Reportedly, that mechanism also gives the US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth final say on whether Ukraine can use ATACMS for its desired purposes or not. There is one example of a Ukrainian request passing this new review mechanism. In November, NBC reported that Ukraine had carried out strikes on military targets in Russia in what was labeled a significant development in the wake of the Wall Street Journal's revelations. The strike marked the first time that Ukraine had openly stated that it had used ATACMS inside Russia since being given permission to do so in November 2024. So we know that it's possible for a request to pass through the US review mechanism, assuming that this mechanism still exists. However, the important point here is that the Rusty Dagger, along with the RASM, may face similar restrictions. If that's the case, Ukraine will have to deal with the difficult prospect of requesting permission every time that it uses missiles which were clearly designed to strike Russia for their intended purpose. Whether Ukraine gets that permission would very much depend on where the political winds were blowing at the time the requests were made. Even so, it appears that the ATACMS restrictions don't apply to Ukraine striking Russian targets in occupied territory. Assuming the same for the Rusty Dagger and RASM, Ukraine will, at the very least, be receiving a weapon it can use to do some serious damage to the Russian rear inside Ukraine itself. And remember, every command post or logistical node that is destroyed severely weakens Russia's non-stop assaults against Ukraine's defenses, meaning that ERAMs may also be enormous influencers on the situation across the entire front line. New Geopolitics also offers an interesting perspective. It says that the arrival of ERAMs into Ukraine represents a synergy between American and Ukrainian capabilities. The Rusty Dagger will be joining an ever-growing arsenal of long-range weapons, including the Flamingo and Neptune missiles developed in Ukraine itself, that will enable Ukraine to launch the types of cruise and perhaps even ballistic missile strikes that Russia has long used against Ukraine. Ukraine's ability to conduct large-scale missile strikes independently will demonstrate that President Zelensky holds trump cards that Trump always worries about, the outlet says. And it has a point. Assuming that the Rusty Dagger arrives in sufficient quantities right off the bat for Ukraine to be able to deploy it in large strikes, likely including other drones and missiles, then Putin will have to be concerned. Not just about the damage that those strikes will inevitably cause. Putin will be worried about Ukraine coming closer to achieving parity in one of the few aspects of his invasion in which Russia holds the advantage. What would that mean for Putin as he tries to build leverage to see through his maximalist peace demands? Only time will tell. We also can't ignore the low cost of the missile. Though Ukraine has fought valiantly against Russia for 4 years, there is no denying that the war effort has taken a significant financial toll on the country. Right now, Ukraine is dealing with a total government debt of over $213 billion, and its debt to gross domestic product ratio is hovering around the 100% mark. Loan mechanisms are helping Ukraine to survive, but it's a country that is in an unhealthy financial situation. Any weapon that can be produced in volume cheaply while still being capable of devastating Russia's military is going to be in very high demand. The Rusty Dagger appears to fit that bill. If the missile lives up to the billing along with the capabilities shown in the live fire test, Ukraine may have a game-changer on its hands from an economic perspective, as well as a military one. And there's one final aspect of the Rusty Dagger that could be very important for Ukraine. The Defense Security Cooperation Agency made this point back in August when the sale of ERAMs to Ukraine was first announced. The ERAM is an example of working together with our NATO allies to develop a capable and scalable system capable of being delivered on a fast timeline, the agency says. Indeed, this is a missile that has been developed by the US, with the purchase of thousands being funded by European members of NATO, and with a design that solves a particular problem that Ukraine has. That amounts to cooperation on a level that Putin, for all his machinations, never expected to see. The Rusty Dagger, along with the Rasm, is a testament to what can be achieved when Ukraine and NATO work together to create a weapon that is custom-made to hurt Russia. Ukraine will be hoping that the recent live-fire tests of the Rusty Dagger are an indicator that the first batch of these missiles will soon be on their way, ideally at some point in 2026. Frankly, the sooner the better from Ukraine's perspective. As soon as it gets its hands on the Rusty Dagger, it will plunge it over and over again into the dark heart of Putin's war machine. Speaking of NATO allies helping Ukraine, the US is far from the only country that is on the verge of providing Ukraine with game-changing missiles. Sweden may also be getting in on the act, and there is one word in particular that will send shivers down Putin's spine. That word is meteor, and you can find out why Putin is so scared of it and everything else that Sweden plans to do in our video. And if you enjoyed this video, remember to subscribe to The Military Show for more coverage of Ukraine's constantly evolving offensive capabilities. And thank you, as always, for watching.